Hi, my name is Supervixen, and I wanted to make this video to address the ways in which I think AI has challenged the way people choose to define art. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that AI is quite the hot button issue right now, and I'm here to present some ideas that have been rattling around my head recently concerning new applications of AI. More specifically, my ideas around one of the biggest points of contention around AI, generative AI, and the idea of AI art. Now, to lay down some ground rules, this video isn't trying to, nor will I give an answer on the question, is AI bad? Nor do I think that needs to be answered in order to explore the ideas that I want to explore in this video. I also don't want to quadruple the length of this video in order to answer that. Sorry. However, I do think that there is significant concern about the way that the AI boom intersects with the lack of a clean energy solution in the US. But again, that's not what this video is about. I also want to say that the purpose of this video isn't to tell you what to think about generative AI or what to think about the nature of art, but to present my musings as both a programmer and an artist about these ideas and hopefully spark you to think about these issues in ways you might not have already. Alright, so is AI capable of creating art? Well, I think to answer that question, we have to go over. Surely I'll be able to answer this age-old question. It's so simple. Of course, I can't claim to have an answer to what art is, and I wouldn't want to give one, but I do believe there is one definitive truth about what art is. Art is subjective. Even in saying this, I'm sure I will have people willing to disagree. However, you'll have to take my word for it, at least for the course of this video. I think it's impossible for everyone to have the same belief on what makes something art or what makes art good. Take, for example, Mark Rothko. I am not afraid to admit that I enjoy Rothko's work. The simplicity of his painting speaks to me in a certain way. The way that he chooses the colors, the fuzziness of shapes, and the way he positions shapes within the canvas are all quite appealing to me. That being said, it's quite easy to find criticism of Rothko, claiming either that his paintings are childish or easy to reproduce, or even that his paintings aren't art at all. As a Reddit user says in a post 12 years ago on the subreddit Change My View, this style of painting does not seem like it requires much effort, which alone causes me to appreciate the art less. But to me, the actual art looks like only a bunch of different colored rectangles overlaid. I dislike this because it does not fulfill either A, sending a message or motif, or B, looking artistically pleasing or meaningful. I can tell by reading this post that this user is seeing the exact same pieces of art as me, noticing the same details, and despite this, coming out with a completely different perspective on Rothko as an artist. Of course, this is the definition of subjectivity. We see the same thing and come out with completely different ways of thinking about it. Take another example. Barnett Newman, a contemporary of Rothko and another of the biggest names in abstract expressionism. I could say many of the same things about Newman as I could Rothko. His choice of such vibrant colors on canvases that are so incredibly massive. Where I find that Rothko's work imparts a bit of sadness and melancholy, Newman's works are more awe-inspiring and joyful. And, in 1986, his painting, Who's Afraid of Red, Yellow, and Blue 3, was slashed with a knife by Gerard Jan van Bladeren, who, in 1997, after having served 5 months in jail, would strike again, slashing another of Newman's paintings, Cathedra. Frankly, I don't think a clearer criticism of a work could be made. However, Rothko and Newman both operate in the realm of painting, an art form which, regardless of personal taste, not many would dispute as art. So, I wish to venture as deep into the weeds as I can get before breaching a real discussion on AI creations as art, with a discussion of some chairs. This is a wooden handmade chair I found by looking up wooden handmade chair on Etsy. Please stay with me here. It's made by the seller Kovchek Works and valued at $410.43 when not on sale. And it looks quite nice. If you zoom in or look at the close-up photos, you can even see some of the clear handcrafted details, and it's quite impressive inside. I hope that we can all agree, even if only for the sake of argument, that this chair is a work of art. I can only assume that it takes a significant amount of time and effort to craft even one of these pieces. Now, this is an Ivar from IKEA. Again, this chair is made of wood, pine as the IKEA website specifies, and is valued at $50. I still think that it looks quite nice, but those handmade details are gone. In fact, knowing that it's from IKEA, you'll probably be the one putting it together, only receiving for your purchase a number of processed pieces of wood and screws and probably those little pegs that you'll have to hammer in. But, of course, I'm showing you this with a purpose, because although IKEA isn't the fanciest place to get your furniture, they presumably have to hire designers who at some point sat down and created the Ivar. Maybe not one person, maybe even hundreds of people, passing around one design, revising it over and over. But there's a source for the design of this chair somewhere within IKEA. Would you be willing to call any of those designers artists? Now, let's push things a little further. This is Penz's stack chair from Adams Manufacturing. It's valued on the Walmart website at $9 and can even be bought with next day shipping. It's definitely not made of wood. The manufacturing website says it's made of, quote, high quality molded resin. I may have lost you at this point, but obviously I still have a reason to be showing this to you, because although this chair is made of resin injected into a massive metal mold in some factory somewhere, there was still a designer. Some employee of this company had to sit down one day with one of their daily tasks being to hop into CAD and throw together a new chair design. They most likely had very precise specifications on how to design in order to meet the weight standard, and they might not have had a single say on how this chair was going to look. But there was a designer. To stretch even further, someone had to design the machines that extrude the resin into these metal molds. Is this anonymous chair designer an artist? Are the people who design the machines which make the chairs artists by any respect? Though I pose these questions, again, I don't need you to say yes to any of them. In fact, you could say that the first chair isn't even art for whatever reason. That is the beauty of the subjectivity of the nature of art. Anything and nothing can be art. This last example of the plastic chair directly exemplifies the ideas presented by Marcel Duchamp's ready-made. These pieces were barely modified daily objects presented in a gallery setting, the first of which was Bicycle Wheel, created in 1913, consisting of a bicycle wheel mounted on a wooden stool. This is an art piece consisting of only two existing household objects fused together. These pieces all attempted to strike at the contemporary perception of art. Why is some art given the honor of being put into a gallery, while these ready-mades remain in your home as daily objects? Blurring these lines can help to develop your understanding of what makes art. These ideas behind the ready-made objects often hinge on the fact that they weren't made by hand as many goods had been in the decades before Duchamp's first ready-mades. This increased reliance on objects which were no longer made by dedicated craftsmen, but instead en masse in factories, can be seen in some ways as a precursor to what we're currently experiencing. A shift from handcrafted objects to mass-produced machine goods parallels how handmade art is being challenged by the prevalence of generative AI. Of course, I'm not saying that I think AI will replace all art in the same way that factory products have replaced handmade ones. In the times following Duchamp's creation of his ready-mades, galleries didn't start to replace all their classical paintings with ready-made. Instead, these pieces by Duchamp enhanced the variety of mediums that could be displayed alongside these paintings. We shouldn't rule out the idea of AI challenging and expanding our definition of art in a similar way. I also think that it's important to reflect on how our current perception of art has already been challenged by advancing technology in the last couple of decades. In our modern times, we no longer have an equivalent to the monolithic painters of the past, whom served to define the current art style of the era. Like most things, art is now more diverse than ever. Animation, digital painting, graphic design, CG, and countless other mediums now exist with an innumerable number of visual styles. This is facilitated by the fact that art is now more accessible than ever before. Digital tools don't require the level of investment that starting to work in a new physical medium often does, and the prevalence of incredible free and open source software means that you often don't need to spend any money at all to have access to tools on par with professionals. I wouldn't be able to make this video without the free and open source video editor that I'm using right now. This is one of the greatest parts of our digital age. More than ever, people are able to act on their inspirations with little to no barrier of entry. But again, whenever the modern perception of art changes, there are always critics. The most common form of argument against digital art can be found in this post on the subreddit Unpopular Opinion. In this post, the user employs the arguments you find in a lot of similar posts which criticize the validity of digital art. Mainly, that digital art is lazy, and that tools like copy and paste and simple easy color pickers make the art boring. Although this post is on a subreddit called Unpopular Opinion, you can find the same sentiments in posts on pretty much any platform where digital art is posted. by this point, you can probably see how my argument about the validity of AI shapes up now. Much of the arguments against generative AI's ability to produce works that are art is based around the degree of effort required to produce these works, and the general laziness of the prompter. I think that in general, definitions of art that hinge on the effort required to create pieces are in bad faith, as they operate on similar logic to that of the people who would decry a digital painting to not be art. If art were truly judged by the degree of effort required to produce it, then wouldn't art created by disabled artists always be valued higher than similar art by non-disabled artists due to the greater effort required to create it? This is why I think that the subjectivity of art should remain paramount when defining what art is, because concrete definitions of art will always have the chance of letting bad actors shift the definition. The truth is, people primarily evaluate art based on personal taste and their own sense of enjoyment, not by who made the art or the amount of effort involved. So, if you'll let me summarize my view, I do think that AI can produce art. I think that it's always important to remain open to new forms of artistic expression, even if the human element involved isn't what we're used to. Humans create the prompts from which the AI derives the final product, humans create the AI which produces the art, and humans create the art from which the AI is trained on. However, I will make one important caveat, which is something that I find many arguments against the validity of AI art as art seem to ignore, which is that AI art can still be bad, and in fact, I find that most of it is. Bad art is still art, and it is of my opinion that most AI art is just ugly. I do not think that AI art has any capacity to replace traditional art, nor any form of digital art. I also don't want to say that there isn't a use case for AI art. I think one of the best examples is Connor O'Malley's special Stand Up Solutions, which itself critiques the use of AI while using it as comedic aid. During the course of the special, O'Malley plays a character attempting to pitch the ways in which AI can improve stand-up. However, throughout the course of the special, O'Malley's mental instability becomes the centerpiece, as its own commentary on the type of people who believe that AI can truly replace humans. AI is actually used in the special as a sort of straight man to O'Malley's chaotic comedic styling. I think that this use of AI as a comedic aid is probably one of the best use cases for AI, because comedy thrives on unpredictability, and AI is innately unpredictable. I think that the perspective of the purpose of AI has been so thoroughly shaped by the large companies owning them as a sort of miracle machine that can do just about anything. However, I think that like any tool, it has its place, but that its place is a lot more narrow than companies whose profit relies on its mass use might let on. So, partially, I made this video because I had some ideas that were really getting at me in terms of how we choose to define art in both open and dogmatic ways. However, I also found that many of the arguments against AI art as art weren't as fleshed out as I'd like these type of philosophical arguments to be. Obviously, saying AI art isn't art, and if you think it is, you're stupid, isn't the most convincing argument. So I wanted to lay out my personal interpretation of things in a hope that I could be part of a wider conversation about how AI challenges our perception of what art is. And again, I don't think you need to agree with me, but I do hope that you consider the arguments I've presented. And if you're really mad at me after this video, I do hope that you take out that anger by leaving a comment. Because, of course, all press is good press. Thank you!